Hello and welcome back. This is my 7th time recording this, but today we will be talking about arrays. So an array is just a list. It's just a list of elements, and each of these elements are of the same type. Well, you might be wondering, well, in Python it doesn't work that way. Well, Python's a garbage programming language. In this case, C++ and, well, any respectable programming language, you would be declaring an array based on the type. So in this case, since I put int, right, all of the elements are going to be strictly integers. Now, inside of your array, right, you would have to put a square brackets and then inside the square brackets a number to declare the size of your array. This is standard practice, as you need to know the length of your array before you start chucking elements into it. You might be wondering yet again, oh, but Python this, Python that. No. In most cases, right, if you have an array and it exceeds the amount that the array has been allotted, like memory for example, you can cause issues like buffer overflows. It's very unsafe, bad programming practice, and I feel like you should know the amount that's going inside of an array before you even declare it. Otherwise, you should use a dynamic data structure, such as a queue or like, I don't know, a vector or something. We'll get to those in another time. But for now, if you're dealing with an array, just deal with this. So, yeah. This is how you declare an array. Integer, or the type that you want. Then you say whatever name you want, and in square brackets, kind of the size of the array. So I can put size here if you want, because I declare size is equal to 5. So then you can put all of the elements in the array that you want. And let's go and print out the first element. You want to have your bets on what the first element is? Would it be 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, I don't know. Let's save and find out. So if we save, whoa. Sorry, one moment. That's so odd. Does this work? File on disk is... Wow, that was odd. Okay, sorry for the commercial break, but we are back! Okay, great, amazing. Let me just flash the screen so I know what to edit it from. Okay, so now, if we do end up running this, right? Well, we're gonna get 2, but that doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, originally, if you look at the starting array, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So why is it that when you asked for the first element, why did it give you 2? Well, here's a fun fact about arrays, which is that indexing starts from 0. That's right. Your first element is not your first element. It's your 0th element. The initial thing, as I like to call it, is 0. The initial element is the 0th element. Array indexing oftentimes starts at 0. Actually, in every programming language, I think it starts at 0. And this can make it quite difficult for programmers, especially if you're trying to intuition your way out of certain complicated problems. But for the most part, yeah, just keep this in mind and try not to get lost in the sauce, I guess. But yeah, if you do end up wanting to print out the initial, right, you would end up having to print out 0. So if I run this, like if I save this, and then X out of this, and then I run it, it'll give you 1, which is, again, the initial. So that is kind of how you would have to deal with arrays. And yeah, in a later episode when I cover looping and whatever, I'll be able to kind of go over how to print elements in an array. But for now, that's kind of what you have to deal with. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone. In this part, we will be looking at how you can use looping to mess with arrays. So you might be wondering, isn't loops and statements and functions a completely different topic? Why exactly are we mixing this with arrays? Well, arrays are long, and interacting with each element one by one is a tedious process. So using loops allows us to kind of simplify how we interact with every single element in the array. So let me give you an example of how you can use loops to your favor. Let's say we have even numbers, right? Which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 8, and 10. This is our array. Now, assume I wanted, instead of printing out, right, the 0th element, which would give you 2, what if I wanted to print out every single element? Well, logically, you would think that I would have to copy and paste this and then put cout array 0, cout array 1 all the way to 5. But two problems exist here. One, what if I don't know how long the array is? And two, that's kind of tedious. I don't want to waste all of my time doing that. It's not nice, I would say. So, don't forget the semicolon. How would we go about this? Well, we would have to use a loop. In this case, we can use a for loop. A for loop is a loop that has an initialized variable called an iterator. This iterator makes its way through all of the elements in the array and points to every single one of them so that we can do something with it. Now this may sound complicated, but let's take a look at how you write a for loop. This would probably make it make more sense, in a sense. Yeah. So we would write for int I is equal to 0. I is lesser than 5 in this case, and I plus plus. You might be thinking, whoa, that is really complicated. I am not sure what that is. Let's kind of look at it part by part. Firstly, int I equals 0. You're telling the code, okay, let's create a variable called I, set it to 0. Now, while I is less than 5, while that is true, perform whatever's below and then increase I by 1. That is effectively what you're telling the code to do. And how do you verify this? Very simple. Just cout I. Let's just take a look at what I is supposed to be doing. So if I save this, exit out, and then I compile it, and then I run it, see, you would get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But why does that make sense? Well, if we look at our code, first, I was equal to 0. And then when I is equal to 0, of course, it's less than 5. And then you print out what it is, which is 0. So then we have our first print, which in this case, one moment, let me just bring it down. In this case, would be 0. And then after that, it'll think, okay, let's add it by 1. Now, I is equal to 1. Let's compare again. Is it less than 5? It is. So it'll print it out again, which is 1. Then it'll increase it by 1, making it 2. Then it'll check, is 2 less than 5? It is. And this process will repeat until it reaches 4. Because then, after it finishes the output of 4, it will increase by 1, hitting 5. Then the comparison would be made. Is 5 less than 5? I is 5, and 5 is not less than 5. 5 is equal to 5. So it fails, it breaks, and you get out of this for loop, which is why it went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, this is beautiful, because this allows you to iterate through the array. That's what an iterator is, and that's why we also call it I. Well, in this case, you can do something very nice with this iterator. As you kind of notice, an iterator, when you do a regular iteration, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which also corresponds to the elements inside of the array. This is because you start with the 0th element, then the first element, then the second element. So remember how I told you if you cout the ith value inside of the array. For example, if I did cout, let's say, array, but the first address, like the 0th address. If I asked the computer to output this to me, it would give you whatever is in the 0th place. Well, now, what if you just did this? It would give you whatever is in the position that I corresponds to, right? So if I is in second place, it'll give you 6. If I is in the last place, it'll give you 10. So what if we did that for every single value of I? What do I mean by that? What if we do it here? If we place it here, then This means that every time I changes its value, you're not outputting I anymore, you're outputting whatever is in the ith position in the array. Now this allows you to interact with every element of the array, and in this case you're outputting it, such that you don't need to write every single element. You don't need to put cout array 1, array 2, array 3, array 4, etc. You just need to put cout array I and let I keep changing. So let's see what happens if we save this, compile it, and then run it. See, you get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, which is exactly what are all of the elements inside of the array. So that is how a for loop would work generally when it comes to trying to iterate through an array. Now you can do a lot of interesting things with this. For example, if you wanted to iterate backwards, you could do something very similar. You could say I is equal to 5, and while I is greater than 0, then I minus minus. Or I guess in this case, this wouldn't work because there's no fifth address. Remember, it ends at 4, so we would have to change this to 4 and greater than or equal to 0. So let's say we run this. Let's think logically what would happen. At first, I is 4, then it would check, is 4 greater than or equal to 0? Yeah, it is. Then it would do the thing, which is say 4, and then reduce I by 1. You can keep doing this again and again until you go through every single thing in the array, which means your output would be, any guesses? Well, let's compile it. Let's run it, and you get 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. It goes backwards. So that is the beauty of iteration. You can iterate in whatever way you'd like. That's the beauty of C++. You have complete control over how you would like to iterate using your loop. Now, let's go through a slightly more interesting form of iteration without looking at arrays. In this case, I would like to use this thing called a while loop. So let's say we have a number, right? Int number equals to 1, right? We start at 1, and I want to have a thing that checks whether the number has reached 20 yet. And when it reaches 20, then it'll say something and stop the code. So until it reaches 20, it'll have to keep increasing itself. So how do we do this? We can do while number is not equals to 20. Keep in mind, this is the symbol for not equals to. Then remember the same curly braces, and inside of this we can write, let's say for example, number equals to number plus 1. Now you might be wondering, my god, that's mathematically not sound. Imagine telling a mathematician x equals x plus 1. That's just wrong. Like, you can't solve for anything that way. Well, in programming, this is kind of how you have to increase numbers. You have to say that a variable in its new state is reassigned to itself plus 1. So in this case, number equals number plus 1 is valid syntax and how you're supposed to increase the value of number. Now that you've increased the value of number, let's see what we are meant to do with our code. Again, let's run through this one more time. Number starts at 1, it's not equal to 20, then it'll increase by 1. But when it's equal to 20, it will just break out of this. So what happens when it breaks out of this? What do we do? Well, when it breaks out, let's say maybe we see out done, and then exclamation mark, and close it. In this case, logically, again, number would start at 1, and while it's not equal to 20, it keeps increasing and keeps increasing and keeps increasing, and when it is, then it outputs done. And you know what, to make it even clearer, let me just add a part here where every time it increases, it says increase. Whoops. Yeah, let's try this and let's see whether this code will run. Compile it, run it, it increase, all the way to the end, and once we've hit enough increases, then it says done, which is exactly how your code is supposed to work with a while loop. So congratulations, you have understood the basics of looping in C++. And yeah, stick around for the rest of the series. I'll see you around. Bye bye.